The new additions to Cathay certainly help differentiate them a bit more from like the Empire and the Dwarfs, giving them more of a monstrous presence, and Satang in particular is probably the most interesting for me. He's basically a bone giant, but better. A little bit better mobility and reaction times, better accuracy, and better melee stats. Today, I'm going to be fighting him with the Beastmen, who of course did get some changes as well, but let's talk about Cathay first, as already we're seeing some fun abilities being used here. Beastmen, of course, have lots of units with stock. I've also got some Tzeentch Centaurs over on the flanks there, hidden, and they are revealed by the Watcher, which means we should first talk about the Astromancer here, who's of course on his silly bird. I think this is the one, at least, that has the Watch reveal, or am I just going to absolutely eat my words here? No, that's the Moonflare. It's actually Satang himself, that's right. So the Sentinel's got this ability here, which reveals all hidden units map-wide. Unironically, this will actually be pretty good against the Beastmen, because like a good portion of their roster has stock or Vanguard, so they have probably the best ability to hide out of most any factions. There are a few other factions, like if you expect maybe like a heavy goblin build from Greenskins or Wood Elves, this will also be situationally very useful, especially in this initial phase of the battle here. Samurai Warrior is going to pop this, which allows him to see my entire army, allows him to kind of plan, develop quickly his tactics on the fly, and try and see where my units are at so he can react accordingly. Of course, Satang also has his Giant Leap, which is a nice AoE explosion damage, and this Magic Missile here, which is, I'd say it's a Magic Missile. You'll see in a moment he's going to use it on my archers. It actually does insane damage. Yeah, I think this is it coming right now. Perhaps? No. We'll see. Anyway, Celestial Generals on his new mount, which is one of the other new single entities, the Lion. It's got this Roar here, which will remove immune to psychology and leadership, allows for terror routing of many units. But oh yeah, here we go. It gets that little jump attack, and boom, just deletes a unit of Ungor Raiders. I mean, kills almost half of them on impact. So very impressive. My own Cygor going to return fire. The Eye of Morslib there. But anyway, we've also got the Astromancer. I don't think this is actually worth taking, and I think Samurai Warrior would agree. He just took it for the sake of the replay. The Astromancer is actually quite expensive on this guy, but I mean, 50 melee defense is quite high for any single entity monster. Does not have armor piercing damage, which in my opinion makes it worse than the Phoenix is. It's also a more expensive base cost, like the Hornbill, whatever, itself is more expensive than the Frostheart Phoenix, which is probably the most comparable, and it also doesn't have AP. It does have better melee defense. Again, can hold a caster, which is nice. Lore of Heavens is decent. It's not incredible, but there's some upside here. I'm not completely sold on this guy. I think out of the single entities added, it's arguably the weakest. The Lion is solidly in the middle. Satang is be very good in some situations. For the rest of the build, we've got the Onyx Crowmen, who have the new elemental trait, which basically means they're demonic. They suffer instability. Yeah, it makes them worse, certainly, which is fine. You know, Onyx Crowmen were a unit that probably needed a little bit of a nerf, and I think this is a fine way of actually accomplishing that, to be honest. So we've got some of them here. We've got some Jade Crossbowmen, some Jade Warriors in the front line, Peasant Long Spears, and Peasant Horsemen protecting the flanks. My Beastmen advancing this whole time. We've got sort of a Tzeentch kind of spawn-inspired build with Morgr the Shadowgave, a couple of True Spawn. Zangors have had a rework as well. They're no longer Bestigors downgraded. Essentially now they're more like upgraded Gors. Still 35 charge, though, with Primal Fury active, which is very good. And yeah, 50 armor is a little bit better than your average Beastman unit, but certainly lower than that 80 that they had before. Still a solid unit overall. Magical damage, barrier, decent HP, and they're only 650, which is nice. A little bit of cost reduction for that tier reduction. But the Centaurs of Tzeentch are the new ones here. They're Centaurs with great weapons that essentially just get barrier and magic attacks. Yeah, this arcane charge ability as well. Effect intensity increases when nearby allies or enemies cast spells, and keep in mind that is a map-wide effect. So while initially they start out basically bog standard, the same as your average Centaur Great Weapon, this actually will make them sort of power up over time. So you do need to be a little bit more careful about how you use them initially. Like, you don't want them to take too much damage in the initial phase of the fight, so that they're not as useful later on when they have their weapon strength a little bit charged up from casting spells. But let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and cast a spell as I kind of YOLO charge my caster in here. We're going to throw a little Traderkin. But unfortunately, my caster gets very well caught up by the Celestial Lion. It's going to activate its ability here to try and terror route me. I'm not even going to remember what this thing is called. The Hornbill, I'll just call it, because that's basically what it is, right? The Hornbill Phoenix. It's also going to come in and contribute, and the Brave Shaman just gets absolutely terrified away, which no one's surprised with. I also charge in my Centaurs in the front line. I'm trying to break some of these Jade Warriors initially, maybe try and get at those juicy Jade Crossbowmen in the back. But Samurai Warrior does a great job countercharging me with his own Peasant Horseman, which, although if I were to get a direct charge, the Centaurs would win no problem. The Peasant Horseman, in that great of numbers, especially countercharging me, is actually going to be very effective. And do summon up some Chaos Spawn to kind of muck up their backline and continue to deal damage. Second Chaos Spawn also pops up right here. So we've got the power timing push going. That said, Cathay is ahead on the balance of power. Crowman went back and swooped on the Eye of Morslave, interrupting him from attacking. I'm also a little bit late on some of these True Spawn following up, but they will get in the fight regardless. Got these Ungor Raiders coming through as well, but yeah, definitely need to pull back those Centaur's great weapons and look for a little bit better opportunities to engage. They're not really a frontline unit at all, but Samurai Warrior dropping that little AoE damage ability on the side here is starting to work through some of these Zangors and Ungor Spearmen. That said, I'm still winning the infantry fight in most places on both of the flanks pretty much, especially Samurai Warrior's right flank starting to collapse now, which then opens up some avenues for these Centaurs to get through, try and pay for themselves. Saitang drops another big magic missile there, trying to burst through the Ungor Raiders, which is definitely a good call. They're quite a nice unit here, and Samurai Warrior's own mobility has its hands full trying to deal with my mobility, so doesn't have a lot of resources to dedicate, try and take those archers out in the back line. That said, Centaur of Tzeentch, they get through, and they're able to finish off some of the Peasant Horsemen, start to kind of capitalize on a lot of these routing units, get through on those Jade Warrior crossbows. Meanwhile, Satang coming forward to fight in melee. I'm going to also bring Eye of Morslave forward a little bit here. I had to use the Warp Gaze to freeze the Onyx Crowman so that it could come forward a little bit away from them, continue shooting. Morgar going to come through now as well, try and bring up some supporting spawn because I'm hoping to get a Kaiju battle going. And Samurai Warrior at this point was like, let's do it, even though he knows at this point it would be better for him to just sit back and shoot with Satang and capitalize on that massive anti-large bonus he has at ranged. For the replay, you know, for the visuals of it, he said, let's just get these two to fight in combat, which I certainly appreciate. Again, even if from a tactical perspective, it would be obviously much better to just let Satang shoot. If I pull up his card here, let you see his missile damage as they continue doing some kind of synced attack animations. I will just say I like the crotch kick in particular from the Cygor. That's a nice touch. But yeah, 200 bonus versus large there is quite impressive. The Celestial General and the Hornbill also jump down on Morgar. He's going to get some support of some Chaos Spawn. We've got the Raiders nearby as well, so all this is great. Meanwhile, if we take a look in the back line, the Centaurs have managed to clean up most of the Jade Warrior crossbows, help chase some routing units off, and just locally, I'm pretty confident that once these Cathayan units are all spread out and strung out, my Ungors and Zangors can deal with them no problem and win individual combats to make sure those kind of isolated units can't come back and contribute to this main fight. Unfortunately for Satang, that melee fight didn't go particularly well for him, and there's a few reasons why, one of them being that the Ungor Raiders were able to support a little bit shooting. Also, the single entities here, the Astromancer and the Celestial General, are struggling a little bit. Chaos Spawn are very good monstrous infantry, and Beastmen in particular are also poison. Morgar is also not a pushover either, so they are all taking quite a bit of damage. The Astromancer especially, I mean, that thing has only got 40 armor in comparison to the 80 armor of the Frost Art Phoenix, right? It's another point against it. I really am not totally enamored with the balance of this thing. It's basically like a twice it costs Eagle, more or less. It's maybe a little bit harsh, but I'll probably end up eating my words at some point about it. But yeah, I'm just not very impressed with the Celestial Birdie. The Lion, on the other hand, is pretty solid, but still, I mean, it's a little bit overmatched against the Spawn and Morgar altogether. Got some Ungor Spearmen moving in now. Kaiju's getting it going in the back. Once again, Centaur with great weapons. Successful in many aspects. Move in to help contribute their armor-piercing damage to this late-game fight. Taking a wide look once again. See the Ungor Spearman herd. Zangors, again, just fighting locally and winning against whatever tattered Cathayan units they can come across. So we'll keep it here on this big, important battle. Let's see. Satang doing it. Nice little wind breath there. Oof. Nice little fist of power attack from Satang. The counter kick, the counter shin kick. That's like a nice MMA move from the Cygor there. Just checking him constantly. Oh yeah. Spinning laser beam attack has to be one of the coolest for sure, even if it's not the best attack animation. I love that one too, the power hand, flaming fist. Unfortunately, Satang, as cool as he is, can't stand up to such Tzeentchian tricks. Eventually does fall to the AP of the Beastmen. It's going to put a significant hindrance on the balance of power, obviously. And, yeah, little Hornbill drops his, it's not a flaming phoenix species, unfortunately. The alliteration just doesn't work out. I'll have to figure out some other, you know, wind or something. I don't know. Divine wind, let's say. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. Astromancer does end up getting 189 kills, 1600 damage. I think we'll look after the fact at his cost. I believe he's like 22. Oh, he's over 2,000, I believe, with just basic spells on that mount. So, yeah, not the most effective. Can be effective, certainly. Maybe I'm poo-pooing on it too much, and certainly in some matchups I could see it maybe being a little bit better, but maybe with healing also. I mean, it does have 50 melee defense, so perhaps if you were to take Miao Ying and get it some Earthblood or regrowth, it could potentially get a little bit better value as well, just through sustaining, you know, through a grinding fight. Generally, flying single entities especially, but really single entity monsters in general tend not to have this high of melee defense, so that is 1 point in its favor. I just, I'm struggling to really see the best use case for it. I'm sure other people will come up with good use cases for it, but I don't know. It's a little bit of a weird one to use in practice. I guess I expected it to have AP damage, and the fact that it doesn't is a big hindrance, I think, but maybe not the biggest in the world. I don't know. Hard to say. Beastmen are certainly not the most armored faction, so this is one where it potentially could have been effective, and it was reasonably effective, but not as effective as the Centaurs of Tzeentch. Again, I misused them initially and was able to thankfully recover them, and then, you know, sort of the second, third quarters, they came through big time, shut down a lot of these armored infantry units in the back line for Cathay, which is super effective. The Zangors, I'm not sure how I feel about the changes. I think they did need a little bit of a nerf just to kind of help differentiate them from being Bestigors, basically. But, yeah, the way it was executed remains to be seen how useful they'll be. I think they'll still have a place in Beastman's roster. They're not going to be quite as good before. But, yeah, Spawn's good as always. Morgar also. I have Morslave. Nice pick in this matchup. I generally like it against Cathay. As long as it doesn't get over-cannoned, which certainly is a risk, but at the same time, generally Beastmen have enough mobility that people aren't even going to try that against you necessarily. So Tang does pretty much pay for himself. He's about 2,000 if you cut his abilities, although with his abilities, it is a little bit more expensive, so not totally cost-effective, but still pretty decent. Other single entities also do okay on value. Let's actually quickly check here for Cathay's new single entities. Just kind of finish up with them. So yeah, Satang, he's, yeah, the wind bow is definitely worth taking. You can certainly generate more than 200 value, especially if you're shooting into a more expensive, like, elite infantry unit. The Giant Leap is one. I might cut that. And the Master of the Stone Legions, unless you have quite a few constructs, I don't really think this is worth it necessarily. And in multiplayer, you're limited in the number of single entities you can bring, so it's just not going to be wildly useful. That'll be much better in campaign when you can take like a full Doom stack of single entity constructs. Or, you know, make a Tomb King ally and recruit some multi-model construct units from them, perhaps. Who knows? And maybe we'll see more construct units added in the future, and that'll become more useful in multiplayer. But as it is, not amazing. The Gate Master we'll talk about another time. He's pretty useless as well, to be honest, in multiplayer at least. The Celestial Lion, solid. That removing immune to psychology opens up some really nice terror route opportunities, especially if you're synergizing with like kind of a shock-oriented build with either, you know, Longmas, maybe some Lancers on the ground. Maybe support with the Jet Lion for harmony. It could be interesting, certainly. But then, yeah, this thing here. Where is it? The Great Moonbird. I'm not going to remember that name, so we'll just continue to call it the Hornbill. Yeah, 1,700 base cost, but keep in mind for the Astromancer, it costs 1,550 to mount him up on that, so, I mean, you would definitely not take him with a full kit. Most likely, I mean... yeah, with no spells and with just the bird, he's 1,900, so it's an extra 200 cost over the base variant. Literally same stats. No, actually 8 more HP. Wow, and does not give a harmony amplifier as well. This one does count as harmony of yin, which, I mean, that's missile harmony, actually. So it is another way to get harmony onto your melee units without having to actually take missile units if you're going with like an all melee rush build, right, rather than taking a jet line or a crowman. But the Astromancer doesn't get it. You do get the ability to cast spells, though, so like a very basic spell kit, right? Like if you take Wind Blast and Harmonic Convergence, you're already looking, you know, easily over 2,000 points, right? So, I don't know. I think it's going to struggle to be cost-effective. Maybe you take it by itself, again, with Meow Ying for some healing, potentially. There's some synergy there, but you guys have to let me know down in the comments below. How do you feel about this? Do you think it's useless, strong? How do you think it's going to play? I mean, obviously, you guys, when you're seeing this, I don't think you'll have gotten your hands on it yet, but when you do get your hands on it, maybe come back and leave a comment on this video and let me know how you feel. Anyway, that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.